Hannah Kim's hands shook as she carried her lunch tray through the crowded cafeteria at Terran Space Academy. The massive hall buzzed with conversations. But she could still hear the whispers that followed her like shadows. There she goes again. The mixed one. I heard her stepmom is from Africa. How embarrassing for her family. Real Koreans keep their bloodlines pure. What was her father thinking? The words cut deep. But Hannah kept walking. She had learned to ignore the stares and comments over the past 3 years, ever since Dr. Keisha Williams married her father. Her real mother had died in a transport shuttle accident when Hannah was just 14. The grief had nearly destroyed her father until Dr. Williams came into their lives. Dr. Williams wasn't just any woman. She was one of the most brilliant xenobiologists in the galaxy. With 3 degrees from Earth University and groundbreaking research on alien life forms. But none of that mattered to the other cadets at the academy. All they saw was her dark skin and judged Hannah for having a black stepmother. Hannah found an empty table in the corner, far from the groups of laughing students. She tried to focus on her quantum physics homework, but the familiar voice of June Park cut through her concentration. "Hey, half-breed," June called out from across the cafeteria. He was the academy's golden boy, top of every class, with perfect Korean features and a family line that traced back to the first space colonists. "Maybe your stepmom can teach you some tribal dancing instead of real science." His friends exploded. With laughter, Hannah's face burned with shame and anger. She wanted to disappear, to transfer to another academy where nobody knew her story. But then she remembered what Dr. Williams had told her just last week. "Hannah, my dear," her stepmother had said while they worked together in the lab, "strength doesn't come from purity, it comes from diversity. The universe is vast and full of different life forms. Only those who can adapt and learn from others will survive out there." Dr. Williams had been studying samples from the outer rim planets, strange organisms that defied everything humans thought they knew about biology, while other scientists dismissed these creatures as anomalies. Dr. Williams saw patterns and connections that others missed. Every species has something to teach us, she had explained to Hannah. Even the smallest microbe from the most distant world carries wisdom we need to understand. Now, sitting alone in the cafeteria while June's laughter echoed round her, Hannah held onto those words. She pulled out her tablet and began reading the latest reports from the Galactic Council. The news was always the same. Humanity was expanding into space, but they were struggling to adapt to alien environments and make contact with other species. That's when she saw it. A breaking news alert flashed across her screen. Galactic Council announces first deep space colonization mission to Kepler system. Hannah's heart raced as she read the details. The mission would take a crew of 200 colonists to establish humanity's first permanent settlement outside the solar system. The Kepler system had 3 potentially habitable planets, but preliminary scans showed signs of existing alien life. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This is my chance." The application process would be brutal. Only the best and brightest cadets would be selected. Hannah knew she faced an uphill battle. Her grades were excellent, but the selection committee would be looking for more than just academic achievement. They wanted leaders, innovators, and people who could represent humanity among the stars. June Park and his friends were already talking about the mission, confident they would be chosen. They came from the right families, had the right connections, and fit the image of what a space colonist should look like. But Hannah had something they didn't. She had Dr. Williams' guidance and a unique perspective that came from growing up in a mixed family. While the other cadets learned about alien life from textbooks, Hannah had spent countless hours in the lab with her stepmother, studying real samples and learning to think outside the box. "You see things differently, Hannah. Dr. Williams had once told her, "That's not a weakness, that's your superpower." As the cafeteria began to empty, Hannah made her decision. She would apply for the colonization mission. No matter what the others thought, she would prove that being different wasn't something to be ashamed of. It was something to be proud of. She gathered her things and headed for the door, ignoring the whispers that still followed her. Tomorrow, she would begin preparing for the most important challenge of her life. The stars were calling, and Hannah Kim was ready to answer. The selection trials began at dawn on a cold Monday morning. 300 cadets from across the galaxy had gathered at Terran Space Academy, but only 50 would make it onto the colony ship. Hannah stood in line with the other hopefuls, her stomach churning with nerves. The first week was physical training. Hannah pushed herself through zero-gravity combat drills, emergency spacewalk simulations, and endurance tests that left her muscles screaming. She finished in the top 20. But June Park made sure everyone knew he came in first. "Not bad for someone who's half outsider," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Maybe all that mixed blood gives you extra stamina." His friends laughed, but Hannah ignored them. She had bigger things to worry about. The second week would test their scientific knowledge, and that's where she needed to shine. The xenobiology exam was intense. Holographic alien creatures appeared in the testing chamber, each one more bizarre than the last. There were crystalline beings that communicated through light patterns, gaseous entities that could phase through solid matter, and insect-like swarms that moved as one mind. "Identify the feeding patterns of the Zephyrian cloud dancers," the computer announced as a shimmering, translucent creature floated before them. While other cadets struggled with the textbook answers, Hannah remembered the late nights she had spent in Dr. Williams' lab. Her stepmother had shown her real samples from the outer rim, teaching her to observe behavior patterns rather than just memorize facts. They don't just feed on organic matter. Hannah wrote in her answer, "They absorb emotional energy from other life forms. That's why they're drawn to populated areas during times of stress or celebration." The cultural adaptation tests were even more challenging. Cadets had to navigate complex diplomatic scenarios with alien species, each with their own customs and taboos. Hannah excelled here too, drawing on Dr. Williams' stories about different Earth cultures and how they had learned to coexist. But June Park wasn't about to let her succeed without a fight. During the group exercises, he would assign her the most difficult tasks while taking credit for her solutions. When she discovered a flaw in the habitat design that could have killed colonists, he reported it to the instructors as his own finding. "You're not going to make it," he whispered to her during a break between tests. "They want real leaders, not charity cases." The third week brought the final challenge, the disaster simulation. All remaining cadets were divided into teams of 10 and placed in a virtual reality chamber that recreated the colony ship's environment. The test was simple in concept, but deadly in execution. They had to keep a virtual colony alive for 72 hours while facing random catastrophes. Hannah's team was led by Min Ho Lee, a brilliant engineer who had designed half the Academy's training equipment. The other members included some of the brightest minds in the program, including June Park, who had managed to get himself assigned to what everyone considered the winning team. The simulation began smoothly. Their virtual colony in Kepler-442b was thriving, the crops were growing, the habitats were stable, and the colonists were adapting well to their new environment. But on the second day, disaster struck. Alert, alert, a known pathogen detected in sectors 7 through 12, the computer announced. The holographic display showed red warning lights spreading across the colony map like wildfire. Hannah watched in horror as the virtual colonists began collapsing. The pathogen was unlike anything in their databases. It seemed to attack the nervous system, causing paralysis and death within hours. "Deploy standard quarantine protocols," Minho shouted, his fingers flying over the control panel. The team worked frantically. They tried every medical treatment in their arsenal: antiviral drugs, immune system boosters, even experimental therapies that existed only in theory. Nothing worked. The pathogen seemed to adapt to every countermeasure they threw at it. "We're losing everyone," Minho screamed as the casualty count climbed past 200. "The entire colony is going to die." Panic filled the control room. Some cadets were crying. Others were frantically inputting random commands, hoping for a miracle. June Park was shouting orders that made no sense, his usual confidence cracking under pressure. But Hannah remained calm. She closed her eyes and remembered a conversation she had with Dr. Williams just 2 weeks ago. They had been studying samples from a planet where multiple species lived in harmony, each one providing something the others needed. Sometimes the solution isn't to fight the problem, her stepmother had said. Sometimes it's to find a way to work with it. Hannah opened her eyes and began typing. She accessed the colony's biolab database and started searching for beneficial microorganisms, not weapons to fight the pathogen, but partners that could live alongside it. "What are you doing?" June demanded. "This isn't the time for experiments, trust me," Hannah said quietly. She found what she was looking for: a strain, a bacteria that could form symbiotic relationships with neural tissue. Instead of trying to kill the pathogen, she programmed the bacteria to create a protective barrier around the colonists' nervous systems. The room fell silent as they watched the simulation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the red warning lights began turning green. The colonists who had been paralyzed started moving again. The pathogen was still there, but it was no longer deadly. "Impossible," June muttered. "That's not how medicine works." But the simulation didn't lie. The colony was saved. The final casualty count was 0. The instructors were amazed. They had never seen anyone solve the pathogen scenario using symbiotic adaptation. Most cadets either failed completely or found ways to destroy the pathogen through brute force. "Lucky guess," June said, but his voice lacked conviction. 3 days later, Hannah received the message she had been dreaming of. "Congratulations, Cadet Kim. You have been selected as junior science officer aboard the colony ship New Seoul. Report for duty in 1 week." She had made it, against all odds. Despite the discrimination and sabotage, she was going to the stars. The New Seoul dropped out of hyperspace with a thunderous vibration that shook the entire ship. Hannah pressed her face against the observation deck window and gasped. Kepler-4 to be hung before them like a dying jewel, its surface a patchwork of brown and sickly yellow where there should have been green. "All hands to stations." Captain Yoon's voice echoed through the ship's corridors. "We've reached our destination." 6 months of travel through the void had led them here. 6 months of cramped quarters, recycled air, and the constant hum of the ship's engines. Hannah had spent most of that time in the science labs, studying everything they knew about their new home. But nothing had prepared her for what she saw now. The planet looked like it was bleeding. Dark patches spread across its surface like wounds, and the oceans had turned a murky brown color. This wasn't the vibrant world their long-range scans had promised. "Emergency meeting in the main conference room," announced Chief Science Officer Han Cho. "All senior staff report immediately." Hannah wasn't senior staff, but she followed anyway. As junior science officer, she was supposed to observe and learn, not make decisions. But something told her this crisis would need every brain they had. The conference room was packed with worried faces. Captain Yoon stood at the head of the table, his usually calm expression showing cracks of concern. Round him sat the ship's Top officers, Commander Park, Chief Engineer Kim, Medical Officer Lee, and a dozen others. The situation is worse than we thought. Chief Science Officer Cho began, activating the holographic display. The planet's ecosystem is in complete collapse. We're detecting massive die-offs in every biological system. The hologram showed devastating data. Ocean life was down by 70%. The forests were turning to ash. Even the planet's oxygen levels were dropping rapidly. How is this possible? Asked Commander Park. Our advanced probes showed a thriving world just 2 years ago. We're not alone here, Cho continued. Long-range sensors had detected an intelligent species. They're trying to communicate with us. As if on cue, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A sound like singing crystals filled the room, beautiful but haunting. The universal translator struggled to make sense of the alien language. Greetings, visitors from distant stars, the voice finally said. We are the Valith, our world dies. We need help. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the most beautiful creature Hannah had ever seen. The Valith ambassador was like a living sculpture made of pure crystal. Its body shifting between blue and purple hues, light danced through its translucent form, creating patterns that seemed to pulse with emotion. I am Velta, the being said. Its voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Speaker for the dying ones, you arrive at the ending time. Captain Yoon leaned forward. We're here to establish a colony. We didn't know about your people. How can we help? Velta, a slight dim sadly. Your kind. Thinks in straight lines. Tick. Use. Control. Our world needs circular thinking. All life connected. When one dies, all die. The humans exchanged confused looks. Chief Science Officer Cho cleared his throat. We're willing to help, but we need to understand the problem first. What's causing the ecosystem collapse? The days that followed were a nightmare of failed attempts and growing desperation. The human scientists threw everything they had at the problem. They tried atmospheric processes to clean the air, chemical treatments to purify the water, and genetic engineering to create resistant plant species. Nothing worked. The bionetwork is failing, Cho reported during the daily briefing. Every living thing on this planet is connected through some kind of biological internet. When one species dies, it sends a cascade failure through the entire system. Standard. Terraforming won't work here, added Chief Engineer Kim. We can't just replace their ecosystem with Earth plants. The whole planet will reject anything foreign. Hannah watched from the corner as the senior staff argued. Some wanted to abandon the colony in search for another world. Others insisted they could still make it work if they just tried harder. But none of them seemed to understand what Velta had been trying to tell them. The Valith ambassador visited the ship several times, each time looking weaker than before. Its crystal body had lost its brilliant colors, turning a dull gray that reminded Hannah of dying stars. Time grows short, Velta said during its last visit. The singing stops soon. Silence forever. That night, Hannah couldn't sleep. She made her way to the communications room and requested a quantum relay connection to Earth. The signal would take hours to reach home, but she needed to talk to someone who might understand. Dr. Williams' face appeared on the screen, fuzzy, with distance but warm with love. Hannah, sweetheart, how are you? Is everything all right? Mom, Hannah said, using the word she had started calling her stepmother years ago. We're in trouble. There's a dying civilization here, and we can't figure out how to save them, she explained. Everything. The ecosystem collapse, the Valith's strange way of speaking, the failed attempts at standard solutions. Dr. Williams listened carefully, asking questions that showed she understood the deeper problem. Remember what I taught you about Ubuntu philosophy? Her stepmother said when Hannah finished. It's an African concept that means I am because we are. We are all connected to each other and to all living things. You can't solve this problem by thinking like a conqueror. Hannah, you need to think like the ecosystem itself. But how? Hannah asked. The senior staff has tried everything. Have they tried listening? Dr. Williams asked. Really listening? Not just to the words, but to the meaning behind them. The Velith said your kind thinks in straight lines. But their world needs circular thinking. What do you think that means, Hannah? Thought about it. Straight lines versus circles, taking versus giving, conquering versus connecting. Suddenly, she began to understand. I have to go, she said. I think I know what to do. Be careful. My dear, Dr. Williams said, and remember, sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the most unlikely sources. The connection ended. Leaving Hannah alone with her thoughts, outside the small window, Kepler 44 to be continued its slow death spiral. But for the first time since they had arrived, Hannah felt hope. She had an idea that might save both species. She just had to convince the senior staff to listen to a junior officer who thought differently than the rest of them. Hannah couldn't sleep that night. While the rest of the crew rested, she made her way to the ship's biolab, her mind racing with possibilities. The conversation with Dr. Williams had planted a seed of understanding, but she needed to dig deeper. The lab was empty except for the soft hum of equipment and the gentle blue glow of specimen contained. As Hannah pulled up every piece of data they had collected about Kepler 44b, soil samples, atmospheric readings, biological scans, everything the senior staff had dismissed as useless. She started with the planet's root system network. The Velith had mentioned that all life was connected, but the human scientists had treated this as primitive superstition. Hannah looked closer. The underground fungal networks weren't just communication systems, they were the planet's nervous system. Its blood vessels, its very soul. Incredible, she whispered, zooming in on the microscopic structures. They looked almost identical to the mycelial networks Dr. Williams had shown her from African forests, where trees shared nutrients and information across vast distances. Working through the night, Hannah began to see the bigger picture. The Velith weren't just another alien species. They were living extensions of the planet itself. Their crystalline bodies acted as biological amplifiers, helping coordinate the massive underground network that kept everything alive. But something had broken the connection. The network was fragmenting, causing a cascade failure that would eventually kill everything on the planet. The human terraforming attempts had only made it worse, introducing foreign elements that the network couldn't integrate. Think circular, not linear, Hannah muttered, remembering Velter's words. Healing, not replacing. She pulled up her stepmother's research on traditional African agriculture. There it was, the ancient practice of companion planting, where different species were grown together to create mutually beneficial relationships, not competition, but cooperation. Hannah's hands flew over the keyboard as she began designing a new approach. Instead of trying to replace the alien biology, she would help repair the broken connections. She identified key species that acted as network nodes and developed a treatment that would strengthen their ability to communicate with each other. The breakthrough came at dawn. Hannah discovered that the Velith themselves produced a unique enzyme that could act as a biological bridge between different species. If she could synthesize this enzyme and introduce it at strategic points in the network, the healing process would spread naturally across the entire planet. It's like acupuncture, she said to herself, excited by the elegance of the solution. Find the right pressure points, and the body heals itself. But there was a problem. The senior staff would never approve such an unconventional approach. They were too invested in their original terraforming plan, too proud to admit they had been thinking about the problem all wrong. Hannah made a decision that would change everything. She would test her theory in secret, using the ship's fabrication lab to create small amounts of the synthetic enzyme. If it worked, she would have proof. If it failed, no one would ever know. The next morning, she volunteered for the surface survey team. Chief Science Officer Cho barely looked up from his reports as he approved her request. Junior officers were supposed to collect samples and stay out of the way. The planet's surface was even more heartbreaking up close. What had once been a lush forest was now a graveyard of crystalline trees. Their light dimmed to almost nothing. The Valith moved like ghosts through the dying landscape. Their songs reduced to whispers. Hannah found a secluded grove where the network damage was severe but not complete. She carefully injected her synthetic enzyme into the soil at 3 key points, forming a triangle round the largest tree. Then she waited. Nothing happened for the first hour. Hannah began to doubt herself. Maybe the senior staff was right. Maybe she was just a junior officer playing with theories she didn't understand. Then she saw it, a faint pulse of light in the tree's trunk, then another. The crystalline bark began to glow brighter, and the light spread to the smaller trees around it. Within minutes, the entire grove was alive with bioluminescent patterns she had never seen before. By the stars, she breathed. It's working. The healing spread faster than she had imagined. The underground network carried the synthetic enzyme to other damaged areas, and everywhere it went, life returned. Plants that had been dark for weeks suddenly blazed within a light. The very air seemed to shimmer with renewed energy. That evening, Hannah presented her findings to the senior staff. The conference room was packed with skeptical faces. Chief Science Officer Cho looked annoyed that a junior officer had called a meeting. "This is impossible," scoffed Junpak, who had somehow earned a position on the senior staff despite his failures during the selection trials. Amateur work from someone who doesn't understand real science. "The data doesn't lie," Hannah said, displaying her results on the main screen. "The biorestoration technique is based on established ecological principles, just adapted for alien biochemistry. Established where?" June demanded. "In some primitive Earth culture. We're dealing with advanced alien life forms here, not tribal medicine." Before Hannah could respond, the ship's communication system activated. Velta's voice filled the room. But this time it was different. The crystalline being's song was stronger, more vibrant than they had heard in weeks. "Yes, yes, the young. One sees the web of life. This is wisdom." Velta's form appeared on the screen, and everyone gasped. The ambassador's body was blazing with colors they had never seen before. Deep purples, brilliant blues, and shimmering golds that seemed to dance through its crystalline structure. "What happened to you?" asked Captain Yoon, amazed. "The healing begins," Velta replied. "The small one understands what the tall ones cannot see. Life is not conquest. Life is connection." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Hannah worked with the fabrication team to mass-produce the synthetic enzyme. Shuttle teams spread across the planet, applying the treatment to key network nodes, and everywhere they went, the healing followed. The transformation was miraculous. Dead oceans began to sparkle with bioluminescent life. Crystalline forests that had been dark for months suddenly erupted in cascades of light. The planet's atmosphere began to clear, revealing skies of the most beautiful blue Hannah had ever seen. "How did you know this would work?" Captain Yoon asked as they watched the restoration from the ship's observation deck. "My stepmother taught me that wisdom comes from many sources," Hannah replied, thinking of Dr. Williams' patient lessons in her lab on Earth. "Not just textbooks or theories, but from understanding how life really works, she showed me that the best solutions often come from the most unexpected places. June Park stood silently in the corner, his usual arrogance replaced by stunned disbelief. The junior officer he had mocked and dismissed had just saved an entire world using principles he had never bothered to learn. Of the planet hill below them, Hannah felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had proven that being different wasn't a weakness. It was exactly what the universe needed. Her mixed heritage, her unconventional thinking, her willingness to listen to voices others ignored, all of it had led to this moment. The stars no longer seemed so distant. They felt like home. 3 months after the planet's miraculous healing, Kepler-4b had transformed into something beyond imagination. The crystalline forests stretched for thousands of miles, their bioluminescent glow visible from space. The ocean sparkled with life forms that created underwater auroras, painting the seas in ribbons of gold and silver. The Valith had chosen the most sacred spot on their world for the ceremony, the Grove of First Light, where their civilization had begun millions of years ago. Ancient crystal trees reached toward the sky like living cathedrals, their branches intertwining to form a natural amphitheater that could hold thousands. Hannah stood backstage, her dress uniform feeling strange after months of work clothes and lab gear. Through the crystalline walls, she could see the gathering crowd. Humans from the New Soul sat alongside Valith of every size and color, their bodies creating a living rainbow of light. Nervous, asked Captain Yoon, appearing beside her, terrified. Hannah admitted, 6 months ago, I was just a junior officer. Now they want me to speak in front of the entire Galactic Council. You saved a world, Hannah. You earned this. Representatives from 12 different species had traveled across the galaxy to witness the ceremony. The Zephyrian cloud dancers floated like living mist above the crowd. The insectoid hive mind collective had sent their most beautiful drones, their wings creating musical harmonies with every movement. Even the mysterious void walkers had emerged from their dimension ships to attend. The ceremony began with the Valith's traditional song of gratitude. 10,000 crystalline beings raised their voices in perfect harmony, creating music that seemed to make the very air shimmer. The sound resonated through the grove, through the planet's bio-network, and up into space itself. Then came the speeches. Admiral Chen from Earth Command spoke about humanity's expansion into the galaxy. The Zephyrian ambassador shared ancient wisdom about the balance between species. Each speaker emphasized the same theme, that survival in the universe required cooperation, not conquest. Finally, the moment Hannah had been dreading arrived. Chairman Korath of the Galactic Council stepped forward. The ancient being looked like a walking mountain, his rocky skin marked with symbols that glowed like stars. Officer Kim Hannah, he announced, his voice carrying across the grove without amplification, please step forward. Hannah's legs felt like jelly as she walked toward the stage. The crowd of thousands seemed to blur together, but she could still pick out individual faces. There was Chief Science Officer Cho, nodding with approval. Commander Park, who had barely spoken to her before, was actually smiling, and there, in the front row, was the holographic projection of Dr. Williams. Her stepmother's face was glowing with pride, tears streaming down her cheeks. She mouthed the words, I love you, as Hannah passed. The stage was made of living crystal, grown specifically for this ceremony. Each step Hannah took sent ripples of light through the structure, as if the planet itself was welcoming her. Officer Kim, Chairman Korath continued, 3 months ago, you did something that seasoned scientists and diplomats said was impossible. You saved the Valith civilization and proved that the greatest solutions often come from the most unexpected sources. The crowd erupted in applause. Hannah saw humans cheering alongside aliens she had never seen before. Some were clapping with tentacles, others with energy fields, and a few species were showing approval in ways that had no Earth equivalent. But more than that, the chairman continued. You have shown us that humanity's greatest strength lies, not in your technology or your weapons, but in your diversity of thought and experience. You are hereby appointed as the first director of interspecies cultural sciences, with full authority to establish protocols for peaceful contact between all species. Hannah felt like she was floating. The position was beyond anything she had ever dreamed of. She would be responsible for helping different species understand each other, for preventing conflicts before they started, for building bridges across the galaxy. Velta approached the stage, its crystalline form now blazing with colors that had no names in human language. The Velith leader had grown stronger since the healing, its body reaching nearly 10 feet tall and radiating power that made the air itself sing. The wisdom of many worlds flows through you. Young bridge builder, Velta said, its harmonic voice carrying across the grove. You see with eyes that are not bound by the blindness of your own species. This is why you could heal what others could not. The Velith leader reached out with one crystalline hand and touched Hannah's forehead. Instantly, she felt a rush of connection, not just to Velta, but to the entire planet. She could sense the bio-network humming with life, could feel the joy of every creature in the vast ecosystem. From this day forward, Velta announced, you are not just human. You are a child of two worlds, a speaker for all who have no voice. Use this gift wisely. The crowd rose to their feet, but Hannah barely heard the applause. She was looking at the section where her former classmates sat. June Park was there, his face a mixture of shock and shame. The boy who had mocked her for her mixed heritage, who had called her a half-breed and dismissed her as inferior, was now watching her receive the highest honor in the galaxy. Their eyes met across the grove. For a moment, Hannah felt the old anger rising, but then she remembered Dr. Williams' words about forgiveness and understanding. She nodded to June, not in triumph but in acknowledgement. Even he was part of the lesson, that people could change, that prejudice could be overcome. When the formal ceremony ended, Hannah was given a chance to speak. She looked out at the sea of faces, human and alien, familiar and strange, all united in this moment. I learned from the best teacher, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the grove's natural acoustics. She looked directly at Dr. Williams, hologram. Family isn't about blood or color. It's about love and wisdom shared. My stepmother taught me that strength comes from diversity, that the best solutions come from listening to voices others ignore. Dr. Williams was crying openly now, her hand pressed to her heart. Round her, other family members and friends from Earth were cheering. The universe is vast and full of wonders, Hannah continued. But the greatest wonder of all is how different kinds of life can come together to create something better than any of us could achieve alone. That's the lesson of Kepler 44 to be. That's the lesson I hope to carry to every world we visit. The ceremony concluded with the pledge of eternal friendship between humans and Velith. Both species promised to share knowledge, to protect each other, and to explore the galaxy together. It was the first formal alliance between humanity and an alien civilization, of the twin sons of Kepler 44 to be set over the healing world. The grove filled with a soft, magical light. The Velith began their evening song, a melody that seemed to capture all the beauty and hope of the moment. Hannah stood at the edge of the stage, watching the two species mingle and laugh together. Children, both human and young Velith, were playing games that required no common language, just joy and curiosity. You did it, said a voice behind her. Hannah turned to see Captain Yoon approaching. His usually stern expression softened with genuine warmth. We all did it, Hannah replied. That's what I learned from my stepmother. No one succeeds alone. We're all connected, all part of something bigger. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, each one representing a world that might someday benefit from what they had accomplished here. Hannah thought about her journey, from the lonely cadet mocked for her mixed heritage to the first director of interspecies cultural sciences. Dr. Williams had been right all along. Strength truly did come from diversity, and in a universe full of different kinds of life, that strength would be humanity's greatest gift to the stars. The celebration continued late into the night, with stories and songs shared between species that had never met before. As Hannah finally made her way back to the ship, she carried with her the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and challenges yet to be discovered. But she was ready. She had learned from the best teacher, and she would never forget the lesson. That love and wisdom shared could overcome any barrier, heal any wound, and build bridges between any worlds. The ND.